On a winter morning in February 2019, 50-year-old Lori Phillips awoke at home and couldn't find her husband. While she searched for him, Lori spotted something through the window out of the corner of her eye. A dark figure collapsed in the snowbank. It was her husband. She rushed outside, but it was too late to help him. Mark Phillips was frozen to the ground. He had been there all night, but he did not die of hypothermia. Mark had severe injuries to his head and chest. "I just wish I knew he was out there," Lori said. Hi there, welcome to Just Thought Lounge. I'm Kevin. Today's case is another head-scratcher. Strange circumstances, details that cannot be verified, and a wife with a motive. Let's take a look. Holmen is a community of about 12,000 people located in the northern part of La Crosse County in Wisconsin. The area developed from a small farming community over the past few decades, and its rural roots remain intact. On the outskirts of Holmen, on a county road east of Highway 35, was the property owned by 48-year-old Mark Phillips and his new wife, Lori. In February 2019, Wisconsin was experiencing a typically cold and snowy winter. On the evening of February 22nd, a few feet of snow covered the ground where it had not been cleared, and the skies threatened to deliver more later that night. Mark and Lori Phillips, married for nearly 2 full months, made plans with a few friends for the evening. Lori, who hailed from nearby Winona, had invited out friends Hannah Klinsky and Adam Stevens. Sometime around 7 p.m., the group arrived at a venue humbly named the Dive Bar. With many drinks consumed and the hour getting late, Mark and Lori left for home at just after 10 p.m. Exactly what occurred a half an hour later once they reached the house is unknown. Lori reported that the couple had an argument, which ended when she took off in their Dodge Ram pickup truck. She returned home hours later in the middle of the night, once Mark had, presumably, gone to bed. Lori awoke the next morning at about 6:30. She had managed only a few hours of fitful rest. As she went through the house, she found that Mark was not in their main bedroom. Before Lori reached the garage to check for their second vehicle, she spotted a dark lump in the snow through the window. Rushing outside, Lori laid eyes upon Mark, lifeless and frozen to the ground. She ran inside for a phone to call 911.
What's going on? My husband is out of the kidney. He's frozen. Oh my God. Is he frozen? I don't know. He's not moving. Is he breathing? No, I don't think so. Okay, stay on the phone with me. Oh my God. What has happened? Ma'am, okay, tell me exactly what happened. I don't know. I can't. I went to the bedroom this morning to the Okay, what's going on right now? He's still Okay. Is he awake? No. Is he breathing? No, he's not. Okay, we have help on the way. Oh my God, it's been going on here. Lay him flat on his back. We're going to try to help him, okay? I'm sure he's been here for a long time. They're still all over him. Are you able to get him on his back and we'll try to do chest compressions? No, he's too heavy. Okay. When was the last time you saw him? Last night at like 11 o'clock. Okay. He was chasing me down in the truck, and I just took off. He was chasing you down in the truck? Is that what you said? Yes. Okay. Yes, I didn't know he was out here.
It was twilight when responding officer Valencia received the call out to the Phillips property. Arriving minutes later, he took the first driveway leading to the house, the same one that Lori had used to come home the night before. The drive curves to the right around the end of the main house and circles back towards the county road. Before the bend in the drive, just past a pair of sunglasses which seemed to have been dropped in the center of the path, Mark Phillips was found next to a snowbank. Though he was clearly visible from the house, he was almost entirely concealed from view from most angles on the driveway by roughly 3 feet of snow. Sergeant Valencia was the first to speak with Lori about what had occurred.
Oh my God, I did not know he was out here. So we had an argument last night. He was coming around the truck to come and get me. So I took off. His door was still wide open, but I didn't know that he was, like, I don't know what happened. I didn't know he was there. Oh my God.
Okay. Stay here. Stay with me. Okay. Okay. Are these your footprints here? Just yours?
I thought he was, I went to see.
Okay.
If he was, because I got up and I went to the bedroom and I went to see where he was. And so I went to see if his car's gone.
Okay.
My God, I came home last night and I never even saw him.
It had snowed throughout the night. Mark was covered by a thick layer, leaving no doubt that he had been outside for several hours. The only footprints visible surrounding him were Lori's, left when she rushed out from the house to his side. Lori and Mark had been married the previous December, after 3 years together. Mark was the father of 2 children from a previous relationship, by all accounts a loving and supportive father. He had recently been offered a new job in Bismarck, North Dakota. The couple were planning their move. A trailer parked on the back of the property was partially loaded with items. It was meant to be the start of a new chapter in their lives.
Yeah. What? She said they just got married in December. Alright, well, try to figure this out. She said they got into some kind of yeah. I'm sure that's a big part of it.
Inside the house, Lori spoke further with a sheriff's deputy. She recounted how she had last seen her husband the night before. They had been arguing, and she had driven away in the pickup truck, leaving her husband in the driveway. Unprompted, she told the deputy, "I didn't hit him or anything." Lori agreed to provide a written statement outlining the events of the previous day leading to her 911 call that morning. She sat down with La Crosse County investigator Fritz Leinfelder later that day to do so.
Sometimes it's easier. Put your thoughts down. Yeah.
Oh.
In a written form. Obviously, it'll get you going on this.
I should get Mark's glasses on.
Lori was not under arrest. She did not request an attorney. She was likewise unaware that while she sat in the station, the Dodge Ram pickup that she had been driving the night before was hauled away from the house on a flatbed truck and taken to a police impound lot. Investigators were also keen to take a look at the home security camera footage. Lori helpfully explained to Leinfelder how to access the security system remotely. She provided the login and passwords and explained how the system worked.
Camera system. Is your email, that goes by email system?
Oh, and the Mark's email.
And as it passed, you know what his email address is that it would go to?
No, I have all of them.
Okay.
There were 3 cameras on the property. One that captured the door to the house where the truck had been parked the night before. Another captured the back door of an outbuilding. And a third was directed towards the hot tub. Only the first camera was likely to be of interest to investigators, though they could not be certain of anything just yet. While the camera's footage was accessed and a search warrant was sought for the truck, Lori diligently recorded the events from the night before.
Just basically starting from when you left last night, you went to dinner, everything you told me. You went to Sloopy's, had wings, pizza, blah, blah, blah. Went to the dive for the drawing. When things got when the argument may have started, just in that kind of detail. Whatever you think is important to put into that to tell the story of what happened last night with the domestic situation.
After dinner, the couple arrived with friends Hannah and Adam at the dive bar. There, they ran into another acquaintance named Scott Cundy.
To go to feature drawing at 9, and we ran into Scott Cundy. When we were leaving, Scott Cundy asked us to go to a car that had just pulled in to say hi to Terry LaFleur and his wife.
This chance encounter with Scott and Terry was bad news, Lori said, because Mark had been drinking. According to what Lori told the detective, after a few drinks, her husband had a tendency to become extremely and unreasonably jealous. Any link to her past was often not received well by her husband, especially when he was intoxicated. Terry LaFleur, who arrived at the bar with his wife, was an old acquaintance of hers. Terry had once bartended at a business owned by Lori's former in-laws. She too had worked there for a time. Lori did not have a romantic past with Terry, but this did not matter to her husband, she said, who became angry as they tried to leave the bar.
Got into the truck and we left. Mark accused Terry of coming to the bar to see me. He accused me of sleeping with him. Asked.
He's never brought Terry's name up before in his life.
Mark pulled me into the middle of the truck and was holding me down. He had me in a chokehold. After getting away from Mark, I went inside to be with friends that he was still at.
Lori further alleged that Mark punched the window of the truck in an angry rage, his fist landing directly next to her head. When the encounter ended, Lori retreated back into the bar. She was left with visible marks on her neck. Detective Leinfelder did not ask to see the bruise that Lori claimed to have on her chest. None of her alleged injuries were photographed.
The last thing I wanted you guys thinking he's a bad person, though, by reading this. Because he certainly wasn't. He just had a jealous reaction.
He said he had a positive bruise here. You
I
grabbed you by the neck.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if there's anything or not. He had me in the middle of the truck. There should be an earring somewhere in the truck, too, because my big diamond earring is missing still.
Mark eventually returned to the bar as well. Lori told Leinfelder that she believed that he had calmed down by that time, sending her a text just before 9 p.m. apologizing for his behavior. Lori told her friends that everything was fine. They could leave her to go home. An hour later, Lori drove them both home from the bar.
My friends were going to leave, and I told them I'd be fine, and we were going, and went back by Mark. Everything was okay. He texted me at 8:52 to say, I'm so sorry. I love you. Shortly after that, we left to go home. He brought up Terry again and got really mad. We argued all the way home. When we got home, I told him I was leaving. He said he wanted to get his things out of the truck. He was on the passenger side with the door open when he got mad and started running over to my door.
Running. Yeah, I ran over to,
running over to my door. When he got to my door, I took off. His door was still open, meaning the passenger door that he was getting his stuff out. I turned right out of the driveway and it closed. I drove to a subdivision down the street and pulled over to see if Mark was chasing me.
Mark Phillips' autopsy revealed blunt force injuries to his left torso, upper limbs, and to his head. He had multiple cracked ribs and a significant trauma to the left side of his head. Hypothermia was ruled out as the cause of death. If an innocent stumble to the ground had caused the head injury, it would not have accounted for the rest of the trauma. Dr. Ross Reichard, the forensic pathologist, concluded that Mark's injuries were likely caused by an impact with the ground with severe force, or he had been crushed by an object on that side of his body. The injuries were also consistent with Mark having fallen from a significant height, though that scenario, of course, did not fit the circumstances. This left a few options to consider. Investigators sorting through all scenarios concluded that Mark Phillips had most likely been crushed by a heavy object. They believed that object was the Dodge Ram pickup, driven by his wife. Investigators with the Wisconsin Crime Laboratory conducted a forensic examination of the truck. The search yielded apparent hair that was located near the pickup's front right passenger tire, front passenger suspension bar, and the driver's step. They also found fibers in various locations, most notably on the rear drive shaft on the underbelly of the truck. These were found to be consistent with the pants Mark Phillips was wearing when his body was discovered. There were tears on Mark's clothing, including his trousers. There were no obvious signs of damage to the vehicle, however. No visible dents, scratches to the paint, side mirror, front grille, or other signs that the truck had been in an accident. Similarly, there was no sign of blood. Regardless, investigators found it suspicious that what could be clothing fiber had adhered to the underside of the vehicle. Lori's earring, which she claimed had been pulled off during the alleged attack by Mark at the bar, was never recovered. Based on the autopsy and preliminary results from the examination of the truck, investigators reached a conclusion about the death of Mark Phillips. They theorized that, in the midst of a heated argument, Lori had indeed taken off down the driveway in the large vehicle, but not when her husband was safely to the side of the truck. She hit the gas when he was running towards her from the front, hitting him and spinning him to the ground, where the truck ran over his left side, leaving him collapsed in the snowbank. Scared for her own fate after what she had just done, Lori stayed out most of the night, then returned to the house in the dark, claiming to not see her husband in the snowbank. Finally, she must have then pretended to discover him in the morning. La Crosse County investigators set out to verify every aspect of the story Lori had provided them. They were able to recreate a timeline based on security camera footage and the data downloaded from Lori's phone. They found footage from Sloopy's where the Phillips had an early dinner. They found them arriving at the dive bar together. The door camera shows them entering and exiting from the parking lot just as Lori had recounted. A few minutes after they left together, Lori is shown returning on her own after the alleged incident with her husband in the truck. Roughly 15 minutes later, she is followed by Mark. In the interim, Lori was texting her friend Hannah. After the incident outside, she wrote, "Shit just got real," followed by an instruction to delete that message from her phone. Lori did not want to risk Mark seeing it. Interior camera footage captured Mark approach Lori at the table. They appear to exchange a few words before leaving together to talk further outside. When they return once again, Mark is seen using exaggerated gestures, banging on the table, and raising his arms into the air. The argument is continuing. Several minutes later, separated in the bar, Mark texted an apology. Lori's friends left for home. Just after 10 p.m., Lori and Mark are captured arguing as they leave the bar. The home security cameras were not armed when the couple returned home. They did not record what transpired. Investigators were able to verify that Lori drove the truck from the property at about 11 p.m. They also had text messages that Lori sent to Hannah after she left the house. She wrote, "He just freaked again. He was at the passenger side of the truck and tried to come at me around the truck, but I took off. I don't even know what to do. He has lost it tonight. He promised he would never touch me. He lied." Google searches show that Lori tried to book a room at the Holiday Inn, but they had no vacancies. She searched for additional hotels nearby, as well as directions. By 11:40, Lori was at the Baymont Inn attempting to check in for the night. Within an hour of allegedly crushing her husband with her pickup truck, Lori calmly searched her purse for her ID and a debit card. She had booked a room in advance from her phone, but had selected an incorrect date. There were no rooms available that night. Leaving the Baymont, Lori then drove across the street to a vacant parking lot. There, she parked for a time. During this period of time, Lori's phone activity showed a handful of searches and messages. Notably, she texted Mark telling him that after tonight, their marriage was over. "I can't believe you put your hands on me," she wrote. She wished him the best of luck, but would not be moving with him to Bismarck. Then she performed 2 searches for domestic abuse. Upon locating a quote on the topic, she also sent this to her husband's phone. Lori also did something potentially suspicious throughout the night. She routinely logged into the home camera system. Was she checking if the incident from earlier had been captured? Or was she checking to see if her husband was still alive? Although she had nowhere to stay the night, she refused an invitation from Hannah to stay at her place in Winona. Instead, Lori stayed in the parking lot until about 2 a.m., at which point she believed that Mark would have gone to bed. Lori remotely disabled the camera system before returning home, rearming it in the early morning hours, before emerging and finding Mark in the snowbank. In June 2020, 50-year-old Lori Phillips was arrested and charged with 1 count of reckless homicide. Her case went to trial in November 2023. District Attorney Burdick argued that the cause of death had to be the truck. He told the jury, "We know it's not a slip and fall. We know it's not a heart attack. We know that Mr. Phillips didn't get drunk and fall asleep in the snow." He argued that it was impossible for Lori to have hit her husband with the vehicle and to have done so with enough force to cause fatal injuries, while completely unaware of what she had done. The state also argued that Lori's behavior after she left the house was an act to cover up her crime. She had texted Hannah as well as Mark over those few hours and Googled domestic abuse to leave a data trail pointing to her innocence. Only someone completely unaware that their husband was severely injured, lying in the snowbank, would continue to text his phone. The physical evidence supporting this assertion, however, was not exactly overwhelming. A forensic expert who examined the truck testified that the fiber found underneath was a match to Mark's pants, but it was an extremely common material. It would have been a match to thousands or even millions of other garments. And the presumed hairs found on the exterior of the vehicle? Despite the emphasis initially put on these in the early days of the investigation, testing could not confirm if they were human. They certainly could not be proven to have belonged to Mark Phillips. Defense counsel Chris Zacher also questioned smudges in the dirt on the driver's side of the truck, near to the rear of the vehicle. The defense believed they could be indicative of an alternative theory. The steps attached to the exterior of the pickup on both the passenger and driver's side doors were aftermarket parts. They are wide and protrude out the sides of the truck. If Mark had tripped on the side of this step, perhaps had his pant leg snagged and caught for a moment, it could have spun him to the ground on his left side. If this occurred, his hand may have reached out along the side of the truck, leaving a mark on it while he fell back, finally hitting the ground with enough force to kill him.
Well, let me ask you first, do you see the presence of kind of that salt film that tends to accumulate on vehicles?
Yes, I do.
And do you see an area behind the driver's side rear door where that film appeared to have been wiped or marked in some respect?
It appears that in this picture, yes.
And it appears that we have some thinner lines running downwards from the smear near the item of the gas cap. Is that correct?
Correct.
So those appear to be consistent with of a human finger.
I don't have a scaled photo, but just based off the size of typical vehicles, that looks to be pretty close to about the width of a finger.
I'm sorry.
Forensic pathologist Dr. Reichard, a Southern Minnesota medical examiner, told the jury that Mark Phillips had a conservative estimate of a 0.149 alcohol level. He would have been very drunk at the time of his death. He was also found to have Benadryl in his system, which would have contributed to his intoxication. The doctor's autopsy report concluded that the cause of death was blunt force trauma. Dr. Reichard did not determine a manner of death. When questioned by the defense, he conceded that he could not have ruled out the possibility that it was accidental. The theory posited by Lori's defense counsel was possible.
If an individual were caught or tripped by a moving vehicle, that's enough force to cause this type of injury, this subdural hemorrhaging and the exterior head injury if they strike the pavement and is damaged. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Are some of these injuries, doctor, consistent with Mr. Phillips taking a sudden fall and becoming attached to the vehicle for some period of time where he would be in a position to be dragged?
Yes.
Lori took the stand in her defense. She testified that Mark was a loving partner when sober, but when drunk, became paranoid that she was seeing other men. She said her husband always apologized once his mind was clear. Lori also introduced testimony about prior incidents with Mark. Before they were married, he had a history of breaking into her apartment in the night. He had never directly hit her, though his anger-fueled behavior was undeniably abusive when he drank, she said. Lori had learned over time that certain behaviors would set him off. It was for this reason that she declined Hannah's invitation to stay in Winona that night. She had a past there. It would have infuriated Mark if he had found out that she had driven there to stay overnight. Lori also introduced photos of the injuries to her chest, neck, and legs from the night of Mark's death. These had been taken by Hannah as the bruises appeared a few days later. The police had shown no interest in documenting them. Her testimony was also a chance to offer explanations for the behaviors that were being presented as circumstantial evidence of her guilt by the state, such as her choice to remotely access the home security cameras multiple times after leaving the house that night.
What would lead me to believe that he would leave the home?
Yes.
He had stated he found some beer tokens to a Holman bar, that he was going to go to that bar and pick up some ladies.
Okay. And Lori, did you have some sense that Mark might also try to follow you in the other vehicle?
Oh, yes.
Which cameras in particular did you check?
All of them.
Why were you checking all of them, Lori?
Because when I couldn't tell if he had left the house or not with the vehicle, or had somebody actually even come in, I thought, oh my gosh, maybe he's in the hot tub. So that's the reason for the hot tub as well.
Is it something that you were checking throughout the course of the evening just to see if Mark was up and about?
Yes.
Now, at any point, Lori, were you watching anything other than the live feeds from those cameras?
No.
And I'm going to ask you a question that you'll probably get on cross-examination. Were you checking these live feed cameras to see whether or not Mark had been injured?
No.
When you were going home, Lori, did you do anything particular with the cameras?
Oh, yes. I turned them off so that the alarm didn't wake Mark up.
Is that the sole reason that you turned the cameras off at that point?
Yes.
And what would lead you to believe that the alarm might wake Mark up?
Because there's a beeping. I can't remember if it's a beeping or what it is. It's been a few years. But that it alerts your phone anytime there's movement.
Okay. Were you trying to conceal evidence of you returning home at that point, Lori?
No.
Lori later rearmed the cameras from her bed in the early morning. Mark would be angry if he found out that she had turned them off, she said. The defense introduced the dashcam footage from Sergeant Valencia's vehicle, which showed how dark it was at twilight when he received the call out to the Phillips residence. It would have been even darker at 2 a.m. when Lori came home. They also showed the jury a still shot from the scene depicting the snowbank next to Mark's body. He was within frame of the photograph, but entirely concealed by the snow.
Let's describe the conditions when you were driving back. Was it light out at all?
No, it was pitch black.
Do you have any street lights or sources of artificial lighting right in that area that would have illuminated the area of the driveway?
No. Well, my truck lights, that's it.
So other than the headlights, nothing else?
Correct.
And Lori, at any point did you look over to the right or feel the need to look over to the right as you were driving up that west-facing driveway?
No.
Lori, I'm just going to ask you, did you see Mark out there when you returned to the house?
No.
How would you have reacted had you seen Mark?
I would have helped him.
Lori told the jury that she remained completely ignorant of what led to Mark's death that night.
Did you believe at that time that you had hit Mark?
No.
To this day, are you even sure exactly what happened once Mark reached that driver's side of the truck?
I have no idea what happened to my husband.
Lori, what was your sole purpose for trying to get away from Mark that night?
to get away from him so that I would be safe, to get to safety.
Despite everything that we've heard and everything that we've testified to in this trial, how do you feel about Mark today?
I love him. I miss him.
During their cross-examination, the prosecution took Lori step by step through the argument from that night. The aim was to show how angry she would have been. Mark had insulted her, told her that he was changing the locks to the house, and even threw a beer cozy at her that depicted a pair of women's breasts. According to Lori, he had told her, "This is all you're good for." While she sat in the driver's seat of the truck, Lori attempted to record her husband's behavior with her phone. She alleged that he knocked it from her hands. He came towards her with a clenched fist to punch either her or the truck. She was not sure which.
In that moment is when he goes around that truck, when something clicks, that is the angriest you've ever seen him.
The look I saw in him, yes. He was very upset.
Okay. So we're talking about a period of time when he goes from the passenger seat to your driver's side window.
Correct.
How many seconds is that?
2 to 3. I don't know. It's just running around the truck.
So what is the look? I guess describe the look. Describe the worst you've ever seen him. Is he yelling? Is he fuming? Is he?
No. So when I had my phone, and then when he jumped to grab it and it fell, as soon as it fell, I was like, oh no. I look at him and he had this just evil look. And that's just when he just tore off. And I was like, oh my God.
So it was a look.
It was an absolute look. Yes. Was he screaming then? No, not that I recall. I just remember him just immediately coming at me or coming for me.
But it was that look that he gave you was the true worst you've ever seen him.
It's the scariest I've ever seen my husband, correct.
How does he walk around the truck?
He didn't walk around the truck. He ran around the truck.
He ran around the truck. And Miss Phillips, that's when you took off.
After he cleared the front and he was by my door, yes.
Okay.
The question facing the jury was whether Lori's actions had been reasonable or reckless. If she drove off in the truck in the heat of an argument, then she was motivated by anger and not by a need to seek safety. The prosecution argued that her actions after the fact were inconsistent with her narrative. She texted her already enraged husband that the marriage was over only 5 minutes after leaving the house. By her own account, she was not certain at that time if he may have been trying to follow her. Were these the actions of a woman terrified and seeking safety? Lori declined an invitation to stay in Winona in favor of sneaking back into the house that night, where she thought, but obviously did not know, that her abuser was sleeping.
She goes over him with her truck. She causes his death. That is unreasonable and it is substantial. It is unreasonable because it's not based on her need to flee, as she indicated. It is based on her anger. It is based on her being in the heat of the moment. It is based, and perhaps very probably, based on Mr. Phillips and the way he acted that night, that he mistreated her in some capacity is going to be is not in dispute. Maybe she knew she killed him right then and there. Maybe she just thought she hit him, but she knew. She knew right then and there. And everything that happens after that is a narrative that is inconsistent with the evidence that is presented.
There's a corroborated history of physical abuse. There's Mark's behavior in the bar, captured by witnesses and videos. There's his blood alcohol concentration of 149. Dr. Reichard's agreement that this accident could have happened in a way consistent with Ms. Phillips's innocence. Mark's perfect concealment behind that snowbank. Lori's video reaction and 911 call. The corroboration of all of Lori's movements after the fact and her cooperation with law enforcement in providing her phone and camera login information. And that fight or flight instinct that each and every one of us can understand. And you know what? I am a true believer in our system of justice here in the United States. And that I believe that a group of 12 people selected randomly out of the voting rolls, that's how we found you're all good citizens, can come to a better conclusion than any one of us could individually. And I respect the fact that in the course of your deliberations, the 12 of you might be able to take some of these cards and put them back up on the deck. But before you reach the result that the state is asking for, they've all got to be there. And they're a long ways away from that.
The jury deliberated for 3.5 hours. When they returned, they were unanimous.
State of Wisconsin versus Lori Phillips, La Crosse County case number 20CF364. Verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Lori Phillips, not guilty. Signed by the juror foreperson, dated this 10th day of November 2023.
Mark's family members were hurt and disappointed by the jury's decision. According to his brother Todd, the Mark Phillips that Lori depicted at trial was not the one that they knew. Mark's ex-wife Nancy has reportedly claimed his behavior, as described by Lori, was not at all characteristic of her ex-husband. Todd has also claimed that Lori's actions were part of a pattern. He asserted that she had once tried to run over her ex-husband with a vehicle as well. He also questioned the holes in her story that were not properly scrutinized at trial. For instance, how was she unable to find an available room to stay that night in an area that has over 30 hotels? Todd further criticized the state prosecution for failing to question Lori on the abuse allegations, which were corroborated that night by contemporaneous texts, but no direct witnesses.
Cognizant of the fact that there are two families here that are grieving in their own ways over what happened, and realistically nobody wins, but I hope that what the community takes away from this is what Judge Levine said at the end, that this is a time hopefully to heal.
That was the strange case of Lori and Mark Phillips. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Kevin, this is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.
Tell me who the scream saves, I can hear the cries repeat. Gotta take my time, cause these crimes get deep, but these stories can't hide, let me find my seat. Kevin, go ahead and settle in. Gotta be selective, doing all the research, keeping it objective. Always been